The abandoned asylum stood like a hulking, brooding monolith at the edge of town. Its once white facade had long since succumbed to decay, and the windows, shattered and empty, gaped like hollowed eyes. Overgrown vines clung to the walls, as if nature itself sought to conceal the horrors that had transpired within those walls. It was a place where the past lingered like a malignant specter, where forgotten whispers still echoed in the shadows. The townsfolk avoided it, fearing the stories that had been passed down through generations, stories of cruelty, suffering, and madness. But for Dr. Jonathan Reed, a renowned paranormal investigator and skeptic, the asylum was an irresistible enigma. He had dedicated his life to debunking supernatural phenomena, believing that every ghostly tale had a rational explanation. The asylum, however, was different. It was a challenge to his skepticism, a puzzle that begged to be solved. Jonathan had received an anonymous letter, its words a cryptic invitation. "Come, Dr. Reed. Uncover the truth that lies within the asylum's walls." He couldn't resist the call, and so, under the cover of night, he found himself standing before the asylum's imposing entrance. As he pushed open the heavy doors, a rush of cold air greeted him, and the dim light from his flashlight revealed a decaying hallway. The walls were peeling with age, and the air was thick with the musty scent of abandonment. He had brought a small team of colleagues with him, each experienced in their own right, but even they couldn't hide the unease that clung to them. Jonathan began to delve into the asylum's history, uncovering documents that spoke of a dark past. It had once been a place of hope where those suffering from mental illness sought refuge and treatment. But as he dug deeper, he discovered a disturbing truth. The asylum had devolved into a nightmare of cruelty and inhumanity. Dr. Margaret Sinclair, the asylum's director in the late 19th century, had been a proponent of experimental therapies. Patients had been subjected to barbaric treatments, from electroshock therapy to ice baths and lobotomies. The asylum's corridors had witnessed the torment of countless souls, and their anguished cries seemed to linger in the air. As Jonathan shared this history with his team, their unease deepened. It was clear that the asylum held a darkness that extended beyond the mere suffering of its patients. The walls seemed to whisper with the voices of the tormented, and strange occurrences became more frequent. Shadows moved where there should be none, and footsteps echoed through empty halls. One night, as they explored the asylum's labyrinthine depths, they stumbled upon a hidden chamber. Its walls were lined with photographs and documents, each one chronicling the suffering inflicted upon the patients. As they examined the records, the room seemed to come alive with malevolent energy. The temperature dropped, and the air grew thick with an oppressive presence. Then, a voice that sounded both anguished and vengeful filled the room. "You should not have come here," it whispered, sending shivers down their spines. Jonathan remained resolute, convinced that there must be a rational explanation for the voice. But as he continued his investigation, the asylum revealed more of its secrets. Patients who had died within its walls had been hastily buried in unmarked graves on the grounds. Their restless spirits seemed to wander the corridors, seeking retribution. One by one, Jonathan's team members began to experience inexplicable phenomena. Objects moved on their own, and chilling apparitions appeared in their peripheral vision. The asylum had become a nightmarish labyrinth, and they were trapped within its clutches. As fear and paranoia gripped the team, they turned on one another, their trust eroded by the malevolent force that permeated the asylum. Jonathan's skepticism wavered, replaced by a growing dread that he could not ignore. In a desperate attempt to uncover the truth, Jonathan delved deeper into the Asylum's history, uncovering a final, horrifying revelation. Dr. Margaret Sinclair, the director responsible for the torment of countless patients, had conducted a series of occult rituals in a hidden chamber beneath the asylum. These rituals were meant to tap into dark forces, to harness the suffering of the patients for her own twisted purposes. It was in this chamber that she had made a pact with a malevolent entity, binding the asylum to a curse that would endure for centuries. Jonathan knew that he had to confront the entity, to break the curse and free the tormented souls trapped within the asylum's walls. Armed with knowledge and a determination born of desperation, he descended into the hidden chamber. The room was suffused with a palpable malevolence, and the entity materialized before him, an amorphous, shadowy presence that seemed to draw the very light from the room. It spoke with a voice that reverberated through Jonathan's mind, promising agony and torment. But Jonathan was undeterred. He challenged the entity, using his knowledge of the asylum's history and the suffering that had transpired within its walls. As he spoke, the entity wailed, its form contorting in agony. Jonathan's words, filled with conviction and empathy, resonated with the souls of the asylum's victims. With a final, anguished cry, the entity dissipated, leaving the asylum in an eerie silence. The oppressive atmosphere lifted, and the malevolent force that had bound the building for centuries was gone. Jonathan emerged from the asylum, changed by the experience. He had confronted a darkness that defied rational explanation, a malevolent force born of cruelty and suffering. The asylum, once a place of nightmares, had been freed from its curse, but the scars of its history would forever haunt those who had dared to uncover its secrets. As he left the decaying building behind, Jonathan couldn't help but wonder if there were other places like the asylum, where the horrors of the past lingered, waiting to be unearthed. The world, it seemed, was full of dark secrets, and some mysteries were best left buried in the shadows.